RTI's continued excellence in integration continues with our brand new Z-wave control module, the ZW-9. Welcome everybody to the introduction to RTI Z-wave and programming. My name is Tyler Nelson, Director of Training for RTI. Today we're going to be covering a number of topics within the RTI Z-wave platform, including the brand new ZW-9 control module, the ZW Pro management tool, and of course the RTI Z-wave devices. The ZW-9 interface module utilizes Z-wave wireless communication to control, monitor, and provide feedback of Z-wave enabled products such as lights, door locks, shades, thermostats, sensors, and more via the RTI control system. The built-in antenna and Ethernet port with PoE enable easy installation in new or retrofit installation and connects to the RTI XP processor via the local area network. RTI is a full member of the Z-Wave Alliance and has been awarded Z-Wave Plus certification for the ZW-9, ZW Pro, and associated software. You will want to make sure that any other third-party device in your system design has also passed this certification to ensure compatibility. Devices that have been awarded the certification will have this logo associated with it. The ZW-9 and ZW Pro are designed and approved to work with both Z-Wave and Z-Wave Plus devices. RTI's Z-Wave device lineup consists of the following devices: the ZW-9 control module, the ZW Pro Z-Wave network management tool, used for addition of devices with smaller inclusion range such as door locks, RTI Z-Wave controllers. These include master 600 watt and 1000 watt incandescent and fluorescent lighting dimmers in neutral or no neutral, master switches in neutral or no neutral for a variety of lighting options including incandescent, LED, CFL, and fluorescent, 5-scene keypads, any-place switches, lamp dimmers, appliance switches, accessory dimmers, and switches in both RF and non-RF configurations. Please make sure to consult a certified electrician as to which type of device you should be using in your project prior to quoting it. RTI technical support will not be able to advise you as to which type of device to use based on electrical wiring, nor will they be able to help you with wiring connections of these devices. There is a wiring diagram within each device box if necessary. Most switches, dimmers, and any-place switches are available in white, light almond, black, and are compatible with standard Decorus style face wall plates. Wall plates are not included except with the any-place switch. Z-Wave technology is a low-powered RF-based communication that supports the ability to send communication from device to device in order to create larger networks without the need for additional ZW-9 communication modules. Since the RF communication utilizes a sub-1 GHz range, it is less likely to have interference with technologies using higher frequency bands like 2.4 GHz Zigbee and Wi-Fi as examples. Additionally, regions around the world have different RF frequency requirements. The initial release of the RTI Z-Wave products, including the ZW-9 and ZW Pro, are certified for the United States, Canada, and Mexico region only. Devices for additional regions will be available in the very near future. RTI's award-winning integration designer software makes adding Z-Wave control into your project even easier. We have created a program within our integration designer software called Z-Wave Manager that essentially writes a control driver on the fly as devices and configurations are set, and then loads it all into the program file for you automatically. You can then use the drag and drop programming method currently used for other drivers to add commands and place feedback options onto buttons within the user interface. It's remarkable what our engineers have worked up to enable ease of integration to take place. Setup for the ZW-9 is fairly straightforward. We'll want to determine a few things. First is placement. General installation practices state that placement of the ZW-9 away from any interfering objects such as ducting, cement, other metallic devices, and within a centralized location of the project is ideal to capture the largest range. This isn't a requirement, but will help with the overall range. Connection to the main processor is achieved via the client's network. Thus, we will not need to directly connect the ZW-9 to the main processor. We will simply run a Cat5e, Cat6, or above to the location for placement. Since the device is PoE capable, if you have a PoE switch or injector, you can use those for powering the ZW9. Otherwise, included in the box is the power supply and the device can be powered locally. Once we have the device powered and connected to the network, we can proceed with the programming for the additional devices. Again, the nice thing about the Z-Wave network is that each one of these devices can communicate with each other, thus creating a larger Z-Wave network range. This is all done within the programming software. Next, we will open up Integration Designer and the project file we were working on for this client. You will notice we already have his XP6 and virtual panel set up with some pages for lighting and a door lock. Make sure your computer is connected to the same network as your ZW9 and that the ZW9 is powered on and connected to that network before proceeding. We will, once we have checked this, we will open up the main processor's window in the workspace and click on the Expansion Device tab. Since the ZW9 is an expansion device, we will click on Add Expansion Device option and select ZW9 from the newly opened options window. You may have to scroll down to find it. Upon selection of the ZW9, a new program will open up within Integration Designer called Z-Wave Manager. This program will help you add all your Z-Wave devices within your project, create scenes, make adjustments, repair failed devices, and configure the custom-made driver. When the Z-Wave Manager program is open, connected Z-Wave devices will not be operational over that network. They will, however, still have functionality from a direct button press. The program will immediately start a search for the ZW9 module and the ZW Pro tool. Do not have the ZW Pro device plugged into your computer during the initial programming of the ZW9. If you have multiple devices appear in your list, you can make sure you select the proper one by checking the MAC address on the device itself, on the box it came with, or the little slip within the box. Once we highlight and select the proper device, it will populate in the device list panel on the left-hand side of the program and be indicated by an icon representing the device. This will be true for all additional devices included to your program, whether they are RTI or third-party based devices. There is also a location to place a descriptive name for this device. We encourage you to provide meaningful names for all the devices you add into the program file. These can be anything from location to type of device. These names will then be populated into the custom-made driver within Integration Designer. I will name our ZW9 as Tyler Office ZW9. Generally, you will only need one ZW9 in a single project because each additional Z-Wave device acts as a repeater of the signal and thus creates a larger range. However, you can add an additional ZW9 as a second expansion device if needed. The ZW9 we have currently in the Z-Wave Manager program has been assigned device ID of 1. You may have a total of up to 232 devices, including the ZW9, under one expansion device. Each will be assigned a device ID. Again, if you need additional devices beyond 231 plus the ZW9, you may install a secondary expansion ZW9 and gain access to those. The area below the device naming is the scene configuration area. This is where you will define the 255 possible scenes that can exist in the Z-Wave network. The top drop-down list is where you can select which scene you would like to create and/or modify. Each scene name can contain up to 20 characters and should be descriptive. Only devices that support Z-Wave scene classification will be listed as available to be added to the selected scene. The alarms notifications area is where unsolicited messages are displayed when the ZW9 controller device is selected. This area is best used for diagnostic purposes to make sure communication is taking place between devices. The switch all area allows for devices that have the capability of using a switch all command to be configured. This completely depends on the individual device and if that option is available. There is a switch all on and a switch all off option, but you can also include and exclude individual devices from these commands if you'd like. The RF power properties window is used to perform an actual power level test between the ZW9 and one of the devices in the Z-Wave network. Only devices that support this option will be available for use and listed in the drop-down list. Now we will want to add our controllable Z-wave devices. This is done through a process called inclusion. Each device has an inclusion range associated with it. This range is dependent on the device itself. For example, a door lock will have a smaller inclusion range, so only configuration devices nearest to it will recognize and connect to it, versus a light switch, which will have a larger inclusion range. For this reason, we have developed the ZW Pro, a USB-connected device that will help with the inclusion process of those devices that have shorter range, and thus not be able to be recognized by the ZW-9 on the initial edition. We will discuss how to use the ZW Pro shortly. For now, we will click on the Add Include toolbar button at the top to begin the process of seeking out those controllable Z-wave devices. You will see a window open up stating that the program is waiting for device information. Now we will go around to our Z-wave devices within the project and initiate their inclusion process. Each device will have a different way to do this, so please refer to the device's operational manual as to the exact procedure. You will see that as we initiate the inclusion, the devices are added into the window of the Z-Wave Manager. They are provided a device ID number and name. You can rename these with meaningful names here or once we close the window and in the Z-Wave Manager program. Be patient with the inclusion process, however, as the program is gathering all the necessary information to be able to control the device. Devices such as door locks will take a longer time frame because of all of the security protocols in place. If the device is not able to be added, you may have to go through the exclusion process with the particular device first before being able to include it into the Z-Wave network. This process will be covered shortly. Once your Z-Wave devices are added, close the inclusion window. You will notice the added devices will be populated with an icon in the left-hand side panel window. When you select any of the added devices, the control panel windows in the center and right panels will populate with configuration options specific to that device. For example, when we look at the lamp dimmer, there are testing options including the on and off commands along with the toggle. We can also see what the dimming speed is and test the process. If we select a dimmer, we see its options. Please see the Z-Wave Manager user guide for specific area information. If we need to exclude any devices from the system file, we click on the Delete Exclude button on the toolbar and then follow the instructions the device adds to the process. It is good practice to exclude all the devices in a system prior to including them. This way you are assured that any and all networking settings have been cleared out. You never know when a device may have been batch tested. Devices such as door locks have a smaller inclusion range and need to be very close in proximity to a controller in order to be added into the Z-Wave network. The easiest way to do this is by utilizing RTI's ZW Pro network management tool. Once set up in the Z-Wave Manager, this device acts as a secondary controller to that of the ZW-9 and allows for inclusion of devices with shorter inclusion range into the Z-Wave network. Once the device is included into the network, however, the ZW Pro will no longer be needed as the Z-Wave network and device have a much larger range. In our case, we will already have the Z-Wave Manager program open and we'll just have to plug the ZW Pro into a USB port on our computer. If this is your first time plugging in the ZW Pro, allow extra time for the drivers to load into your computer. The program will automatically load the ZW Pro into the system and activate the toolbar buttons at the top. Once it has closed the window, you may click on the plus button to add it as a secondary controller. Next, we will bring our computer over to the device with the smaller inclusion range and click on the button titled Add Device using ZW Pro. Upon clicking this button, the ZW Pro will go into inclusion mode and wait for you to initiate the inclusion process with the specific device you want to control, such as a door lock. Again, each device will have its own inclusion process, so make sure to read the manufacturer's instructions on this prior to beginning. Also, the process of collecting all the information, especially from security devices, can be a bit longer than others, so be patient with inclusion. Once the device has been added completely, we can either proceed to the next device or remove the ZW Pro from the controller. Make sure you remove the ZW Pro prior to closing the Z-Wave Manager program. This can be done by selecting the device in the left panel and then clicking the minus button at the top toolbar labeled ZW Pro. We now navigate back to our ZW-9 where we see that the scenes area has been populated with the devices capable of being added into scenes. This is a feature specified by the device itself, not by the RTI ZW-9. We will have the option to name the scene and then include the Z-Wave devices to be included. In our case, we will name this scene All On 30%. Next, we will select the device and determine the parameters around it, such as what dimming level we would like it to be at when the scene is enacted. Be sure to update any scene changes to the devices by clicking the Update Scenes button. Once we have added and configured all of our devices, we will save our project. This is done by navigating to the File button in the upper left-hand corner and selecting Save Project. Make sure to do this every time you create or make adjustments to your program. Once saved, we can exit out of the Z-Wave Manager by going to File and then Exit. The program will close and Integration Designer will then be present. We can then open the virtual panel and start assigning commands and feedback variables for the different Z-Wave devices. What the Z-Wave Manager program did was create a custom driver based on the devices and the configuration settings we made within the program. Thus, we can access all the commands and variables from the Driver tab in the Library browser. We will select the ZW-9 from the drop-down list. Then, based on the user interface and devices involved, drag the appropriate commands onto the buttons responsible. For example, we can select the lamp dimmer for our living room and then drag the toggle command to the toggle switch on our virtual panel. We can select the toggle button data source and place the on feedback option onto the toggle button so that it shows the state that the dimmer is in. Next, we will go to the locks page and place the toggle commands onto the button. Then change the text variable to indicate if the door is locked or unlocked. We also recommend placing text variables indicating connection, initialization, and programming status of the Z-Wave network and devices to help identify when the devices are ready for normal operation or if troubleshooting is necessary. Once your system is set up, these can be removed. Once we have finished placing the commands and variables into the proper locations, we can load the system onto the processor and bring up our virtual panel. We then can test by clicking on the proper buttons, and as you will see, all the proper commands are taking place and feedback options are present. If we need to go back into the Z-Wave Manager program to make adjustments, add or exclude any devices, we will need to go back into Integration Designer, click on the Expansion tab of the processor, select the ZW-9, and then click Edit Expansion Device. This will reopen the Z-Wave Manager. However, remember that when the Z-Wave Manager program is open, the driver already loaded into the processor will not work. Thus, commands and feedback on RTI these devices will not work until the Z-Wave Manager program has been closed. The actual wired switches will still work to turn on and off lights. In summary, the RTI Z-Wave expansion module offers an exciting new way to control even more devices. Always make sure to double check the Z-Wave devices the ZW-9 will be controlling to make sure that they are coded for the same region and have been approved from the Z-Wave Alliance. RTI Technical Support is able to help with any questions you may have on utilizing the Z-Wave ZW-9, but cannot assist with any electrical wiring or design-related questions as to which devices are needed to be used in an installation. The ZW-9 has the ability to control just about any Z-Wave device, but make sure to double check that the devices have gone through the Z-Wave Alliance certification process to provide your clients with the utmost in quality, control, and features. If you need any additional information, please make sure to consult either the RTI Integration Zone forum, the dealer site, or send us an email at training@rticorp.com. Thank you very much, and have a great day.